We are survivors of the war. We come back to you, our people. And we are survivors of the war. We shared to wait you back. We walk for legs now gone, or lockstep still. We gaze for other eyes now only looking inward. We listen soft for comrades locked in silence. If we have minds less spent, we share unbending. And we who still care life now share this caring memory, that others not forget the dead who have no voice but us.
Thank you, and welcome to this segment of Vet House Voice as we continue to outreach, educate, and chronicle those events and activities of concern to veterans, affected family members, and the caring community. This segment is Deborah Ortiz, Assembling Clout. And before we get into our conversation and introduce our snazzy guest, I would like to thank first Tom the judge, your phone call telling me that I looked haggard. Hey, this is as good as it gets, you know? If you really want to see this, you're an old Korean War duffer, so if you want to, you notice I didn't say your last name. If you want to come on here and sit and explain how good you look and actually chronicle some of your activities, that'd be a hoot. Sandy, I miss having you come out here and explain your activity and your perceptions with your brothers and that. There are so many people that care for that side of the story. And Mary, God bless you, that was an awfully nice comment that you made about the program and about veterans yesterday. I appreciate that. Our guest today is Deborah Ortiz. Welcome here, and thank you very much. Sometimes as we go along, we older folks, we veterans look in the mirror and realize the years have gone and we've become our parents and we've become all those stereotypes that we sort of just disregarded. And it's really neat to be able to catch our breath and say, gosh, what are you young folks? Because when we were doing Vietnam, you know, you were actually, your generation, you were kids looking up and seeing just, you know, the country was chaotic, and you grew up to become our leaders. Our politicians, our educators, people that we look up to. So thank you. And this is going to be a little bit about how you see us and what's your perception of veterans and how we can grow and how we all help each other get on with a common goal of making this life better for ourselves and our children.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. It's a joy, and I appreciate it.
What was your first perception of the word veteran? Where did you hear it? How old were you then?
Veteran, probably as a child, prior to Vietnam, I think, because I grew up with uncles that had been in the Korean conflict. You know, it's just a bare consciousness of something to be proud of, and you know, that we as a family had contributed to something that was very important in this country. You know, pre-Vietnam, a very positive tone. And yeah, you're right, I'm not quite that young, but you know, my recollections as a child, you know, someone born in 57, so about 67, you know, and through 69, you're beginning to see all these things happening in this country, and you know, losing and having family go away and not come back.
Yeah.
And very, very interesting time for the country, but as a young child and you know, young adult, preteen, to sort of have perceptions that were very, very chaotic.
So you're homegrown. You're
born
from
and
this
raised.
area.
Yeah,
actually, not very far from here.
Well, actually, my home now is just a few blocks from here. But you know, my parents actually grew up here. My mother's family came from Colorado, New Mexico, and my father's family had traveled up and down California, originally from Mexico. So my dad's family had settled here when he was a child, as well as my mother's family. So they grew up here in Sacramento when downtown was something very different than we know it is today.
One of the recurring themes and one of the and it's only you I've heard it referred to so far, is when you were first on the political horizon, people, and Duffers, old Duffers, referred to you as, you know, she kind of helps the underdog get into achieve clout, or she helps. The feeling was that you don't specialize out groups, but you help everybody get up to a level where everybody's got the access that we all think we should have, and that in fact a lot of us still don't have.
You know, I have a very unique city council district in that it's, you know, like 16, 17 distinct neighborhoods, and God forbid that you should call Tahoe Colonial or Lawrence or Oak Park or Curtis Park, Hollywood Park, or Franklin Boulevard Corridor, you know, the area downtown around the co-op. So the challenge is to represent each of those neighborhoods according to their needs as aggressively, you know, despite what their needs may be, and they certainly do vary from Oak Park to Curtis Park. And the challenge is to really step inside of that neighborhood or that individual's, you know, persona, being who they are and how they see themselves, and give them what they're entitled to. At the same time, carrying your own personal philosophy about what is right and what public policy should do and what we should advocate in terms of a vision for the city. So it's a wonderful reality check. It's a great council district because I don't have to make compromises. You know, my politics and my soul about why I want to represent people is very rooted in a very sound district.
How do you eclectically combine and see as an effective working together force people from as diverse communities as the Natural Food Co-op, which, by the way, they raised the price of tofu 2 cents a cube down there. That's a private issue, I know. And you go from there all the way over to the Veterans, the Department of Veterans Affairs Clinic, which is I think you said something about the inordinate patient overload that they're doing there, and the facility is taxed, and it's the budget crisis is always given us the answer. And yet you've got the veterans here and the Natural Food Co-op here, and then you've got 3 different park districts in your district. That's cool. How do you tie it all together?
Well, you tie it all together, understanding that each of those components is, you know, the clinic is a base. It's a constituency. It is a vital resource to not only my district but to the region, and to recognize and respect that, and understand that you know, that is what makes for not just the microcosm of society, which is my district, but for the world. And you know, we're all anchors and we all contribute to that. And I'm fortunate in that I've got the hospitals there, you know, the Veterans Clinic, I've got the UCD Med Center, we've got the Shriners coming in, which really provides a nice place for people, you know, who like an urban setting. I live a block away from the Med Center and got a helicopter coming over my house every hour. But, you know, it is really conveying to people that this is part and a piece of the beautiful kind of fabric of life in general, and it's a resource. And you know, in many respects, I'm fortunate to have those kind of strong constituencies and bases and resources in my district that serve not just my district, but the whole region.
Neat phrase. Did someone give that to you, or did this just roll? Your district is a microcosm of society.
Oh no, I mean
it's
just.
I mean it's actual, but that's just a neat. That's a word picture to me.
It's beautiful, you know, ethnically, you know, class-wise, philosophically, and it's almost like I don't have a district that is so swayed in one philosophical bent or one income level that gives me a distorted sense of reality.
I never heard any critique of your politics, your ability of leadership, or your perception in discerning issues. However, I've heard people just flat gender it or flat ethnic it, and if we could discuss that a bit, people saying, well, you know, she's a woman, she's only going to look at women's issues. She's Hispanic, she's only going to look at Hispanic issues. As a polyglot person myself, I think, damn, at least she's going to look at some of my issues. Respond.
You know, people in this country historically have liked labels. You know, I am very proud of being a Chicana. That's who I am, and that's what I am, and I'm proud of it. And it really brings to who I am. It's a part of me. And I shouldn't have to defend it. So I don't defend it. And I think the wonderful challenge we have in this country right now, it's a wonderful challenge, but it's also a wonderfully or a dreadfully sobering challenge, depending on how we deal with it, is that, you know, race is a very incredible issue that looms. And and as a woman,
especially if people play it against each other for judicial reasons or for political reasons or academic reasons or access reasons, to play to oppress one another, for a gain like that is awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, but this society and this city and this district, for the most part, has handled it well, and that's the good thing. I think we have the ability to teach the rest of California, the rest of the country, to say, you know what, people, Latinas, women are a piece of it, and this is all our place, and we're all going to be here. Nobody's going anywhere. So we darn well better learn how to not only live together, but respect what we bring.
So I guess part of it would be like looking at a Caucasian male, for example, running for office and saying, using that kind of obscure argument that's used against you, saying, well, man, he's only going to look out for white male interests, and nobody'd print that.
Oh, no.
Nobody'd fly with that.
No, we had a little uncomfortable experience in which it was represented that I would solely represent Latinas or Hispanic people. As a Hispanic woman, I would only represent Hispanics, which is ludicrous when you look at my voter base. I mean,
17 ethnic, or 17 actually disparate neighborhoods.
Correct.
Yeah.
But the reality of people who live in my district and who I serve versus who votes in my district, my voter base is Curtis Park, which is essentially white liberal. But so, I mean, it defies the notion of who I represent versus who elected me. We all got to get people of color out to vote, and we should always do that, and I absolutely work hard towards that end. But as a Latina and as a woman candidate, we don't have the luxury of simply representing one group. It's ludicrous to even suggest that.
So in the aspect of veterans, sometimes we say, well, it'd be nice if we had veterans, and in fact I do feel that veterans, or men and women who have served this country in uniform, ought to have women and men candidate veterans. However, that's not exclusionary, because if I pared it down, then I would only support somebody that served in Vietnam that was this or this or this, and it would be, I get that racism occasionally. People say, what's a gook like you doing running the veterans, doing a veterans show, and wow, I mean, this is 1995.
I believe it.
So when I hear comments about disparity by race or disparity by gender, it's sort of like, damn, I think this is 95, 96. But
it's a rude
sometimes
awakening.
It isn't. People play those joker cards if they seem to work, and it's really not.
I grew up at a time, although I wasn't wealthy, I mean, I was raised fairly poor, but I grew up in an era when anything was possible, where I believed that as a woman, as a Chicana, and a person coming from, a background that was relatively poor with parents who didn't have much of an education, that I could do anything.
Where'd you get that? I asked you before the show, I said, damn, where did you get your warrior spirit? Because it's just like identifiable.
Well, I had an incredibly strong role model in a mother who was a survivor, who was continues to be incredibly.
This is just an Us Folk show. You can thank her anytime. Thank any of your family.
Thanks, Mom. You're a doll. I love you. Without you, it wouldn't have been possible. And you find people who are survivors with a lot more love than anger, and sort of helps you through life. And I think being the only daughter, raised with 4 brothers, really was an issue. So I defied expectations and stereotypes and norms and recreated my reality in many respects. And
You also spoke with some intensity about not. I don't want to get into like social services like a label. You talk with intensity and compassion about the human condition, about suffering that's caused by situations that this society still hasn't addressed. What do you see as a pressing point right now?
When you take the fact that there are less people who, children who are growing up not knowing whether or not there's going to be an education system that can accommodate them, living in a reality, and as some people live a separate reality in one neighborhood than other people who 2 blocks away live a totally different reality because of their parents' inability to get a job. When you look at the role that labeling, whether it be gender or race or class or ethnicity or being a veteran, where people want to put people into boxes that constricts rather than expands. I think those are some really scary, some very scary kind of road posts that lay ahead. And people are losing compassion in this life, I think.
If you had a magic chalk, what would you mark to start bringing cohesion instead of just disintegration?
Instill in every child a sense of self-esteem.
That starts in the school. Actually, it should start in the family.
Home.
If I look at you and I say, you seem to have your head centered and your life centered, how did you get there? Was it the church, the school, the family, the neighborhood?
Yeah, many of us, and I was raised Catholic, but at this point in my life, probably. That's not a place in my life. It's not a religious piece that I follow. Spirituality is something that really, I think, really comes from family, the love of my mom and my brothers, and to be honest with you, I don't feel all that centered. I mean, there's a piece missing that hopefully I'll go through life trying to find out what that's about.
Would it be offensive if I said to you that part of the piece of that is the thing that is the final separation? The part of that piece is the aging. And we, in fact, in our present culture, don't accept or revere aging as any process of any worth, but that's where part of the centering comes. You have the centering, and it's kind of interesting to see what kind of forces hone it and sharpen it and shape it. And aging is part of that. The mere fact of getting up and being experienced to others and experienced from life. The role that you're doing now, as opposed to 5 years ago, you didn't have the pressures. You actually also didn't have the impact on effecting beneficial change that you do today.
Yeah. There's a sense of satisfaction, accomplishment that comes from knowing that I've made the lives of others better. Not as much as I like to. I never feel like I've done enough. But there are markers that are beginning to make me feel better about it. And you're on the right track, Deborah. You're tackling the right issues. I think being an elected official is a bad thing these days. There are people who distrust elected officials, and the challenge is always, letting people know that elected officials really, our role is really to help others and make government work for them. And it's very wearing and it's very tough, and there are times when it's very exhausting because it's taking from me, but it's the reassurance that I and my staff get from the thank yous and having people let us know that we've made their lives better, that maybe that's sort of what helps.
Any story, any particular story that comes to mind this last couple of weeks?
Oh, poor woman who called 3 days ago, who had a house fall, or the day of the storms, I think it was 3 days ago, who called, literally a tree fell onto her house, could not get out of her house. She had called SMUD or our tree line and could not get through. Could not get out of her house. None of those lines.
She ended up calling the city council person.
My office and my staff just took care of her, and she was in tears. An older woman,
terrified.
So we got somebody out there to help her. But something as simple as I've had drug dealers sitting on my porch who are harassing me, and I can't get outside.
Oh God.
People live in those kind of realities, and for them to call back and write and send notes or little gifts and say, I feel safer than I've felt in years.
I didn't bring this up, so this is not part of any of our background, but I was in some kind of an organizational meeting. I looked up and I watched you walking through your neighborhoods talking about the alley closure issue, and I thought, right on, girl. I mean, good God, and it showed needles, condoms, trash, and just, it's like, man, this is where kids walk through to school.
That's right.
This is where the older people that are supposed to be in golden years take their leisure. They're going to walk. And you were showing this is the trash that we're allowing, or in some ways by omission, encouraging to become part of our life. And if it can't clean it out, close it down, stop that crap from being here.
Yeah, and my philosophy throughout representation, whether it be Oak Park or the Franklin Boulevard corridor or the part of my district that's south on Florin Road, Woodbine, my philosophy has always been that those neighborhoods are entitled to the same standard that East Sacramento or Curtis Park or Lamb Park are entitled to. So that's always my measuring stick, and the fact that in some of these neighborhoods we've allowed this to happen for years, to me, was just, unconscionable. And so I made it a cause, and it took a while to shake up the bureaucracy. But
some people thought, well, at the first, when you're addressing first, that, well, that's, it's a good flash in the pan PR sort of thing, and the other one was, well, that's beating your head against the wall. And in fact, you effected some change. Some of those alley closure formats are used in my neighborhood or my district now. I know that.
Well, we've got them in this neighborhood, Elmhurst, which is also part of my district, which isn't necessarily well, it's one of our more stable.
It's sort of like a re-gentrification area, though.
Well, yeah, but it's, believe me, the housing, with the exception of the freeway, this would have been East Sac. And, but Curtis Park, I mean, we use the alley closure program there. I mean, it's not, it was not designed simply for Oak Park or Tahoe or the neighborhoods closest to Stockton Boulevard, but we've used it in our other neighborhoods.
Out by McClellan.
Yeah. It works. It works.
If you had the choice of addressing one specific issue, which one would you hammer on the most?
I think we need to begin to acknowledge that we cannot deal with crime through simply enforcement. And as a pretty progressive liberal Democrat, having to sort of acknowledge that we've lost a generation of young people who are carrying weapons is, to me, very sad. But we also have to recognize that a lot of what we're dealing with the next generations coming up were created as a result of the last 20 years of either neglect or
sometimes deliberate purpose. If you set divide and conquer, you set each of the factions against each other. I saw that in some of the social engineering of the early 80s. Give this group access or reinforcement or affirmative entry so you can pit them against some other group. I saw that fighting the disparity of fights over funding between Filipino and Mexican American culture centers. I saw that because I went down there, because part of me is that and part of me is that, and I thought, dang, I'm having an internal conflict here.
Half of me wants money and half of me wants money.
And it's one of the things that you brought up when we were chatting earlier, bringing people into similarities instead of dissimilarities, into a common effort instead of this disintegration.
Sometimes it's listening to the voice in the middle rather than being drowned out by the voices on the other extremes. And I truly believe that most people are caring and care about their fellow persons, and you just gotta sort of close out the noise from the extremes and just get grounded. And that's the one thing that I believe in, is that race and ethnicity are not as compelling as we allow them to become, by way of convenience, or even as, who knows, maybe it's by design. And that, we are naturally suspect in our society, and granted, it's due to years of institutionalized racism and continuing racism, but that for the most part, everybody in this world really wants us to try to make it work out well. And we have to make sure that we understand where the battles are that need to be fought on principle, and understand where we don't let ourselves get bogged down by the labels.
As you're aware, and as you brought to the discussion today, there are about 182,000 veterans in this 5-county area. Not separating veterans, the men and women that served actually in active duty, not separating them out as a separate category, and yet acknowledging that service as kind of a younger person reaching out to the Korean and now the World War, not so many World War II veterans, but the Korean and the Vietnam veterans. When I ask you, we always do, just to reach out and tell those men and those women welcome home. So many still have not heard that yet.
Oh, the contributions to, what makes everything right in this country that we continue to fight for was symbolized by, the service to this country and to other countries, and we don't thank our
Tell them
veterans
welcome home, and then I'm going to hit you with the Veterans Memorial Auditorium question.
Welcome home, and thank you for making my home a better place, and you know, reminding us that many of us grew up in an era where it's much more comfortable because of the sacrifice of others before us.
Thank you.
But you know, it's you know, this. Many of people in my generation don't understand what it's like to have actually served. My relationships are, you know, having lost a cousin in Vietnam, and it's kind of ironic because I received the last letter that he ever wrote, and I was probably 12 or 13 years old.
How old was he?
God, he had just graduated from Burbank, or maybe he hadn't graduated, and he left his 16. He graduated in '68, so it was probably 70 or 71. I was in the 9th grade, and. Yeah.
What did the letter say without getting too private?
You know how it was hell. He wanted to be home, and he couldn't wait to see me and all the other cousins. And how was I doing in school? I was in the 9th grade, and I'd always done well in school. And it was just sort of, it was almost like he was trying to comfort me and reassure me.
What year was he killed?
Let's see, it must have been 71. I was in the 9th grade, so I was probably 13. So 70, 71. Jimmy Rivas.
So did that have any, dang, do you know Robert Rivas?
Well, actually, Ronnie, we called him Jimmy, Ron Rivas. I don't think I know Robert.
I just had lunch with Robert Rivas today and told him welcome home again. He was a door gunner over there. Anyway, there's so much of a common thread among other things, and we don't really have a lot of time to touch on all these things. In the conclusion, and this has been a real fast time, I think Nathan's given me the high sign pretty soon, that if you had a dream to unwrap for the people, what would it look like?
I think it would be a dream that people believe in a tomorrow that's positive, rather than being bogged down by the burdens of the yesterdays, and a dream that, you know, we are all going to contribute something, and that we're going to make the place a better place by each of our contributions.
If you look at that phrase that you turned, is that an appropriate phrase for you, serving the microcosm of society?
You know, I'm a fighter for the underdog. You know, nothing brings me to a greater challenge than that fight.
You mentioned also that that's not predicated on ethnicity. If you don't fight for the European American rights, if you don't fight for the African American rights, and we see people particularizing out their efforts, and I see you as hegemonizing or bringing us together. What kind of wrapping do you put on your dream?
Wrapping. You know, it's a humanity. I mean, it's a mosaic. It's got lots of different colors, and it looks like every one of us, when we look at it, we see ourselves in it.
It's neat. That is neat. Thank you for caring to come on to this show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for continuing to outreach and to care and to address and to recognize veterans. You are you're a snazzy warrior, lady. Thank you.
Thank you. Good show.
Yeah, gee, I'm glad you came in even on your sickbed. I really appreciate the effort because a lot of the folks wanted to hear you.
Well, you're kind.